in the Nordic countries, we do have a big tradition of collaborating, but I don't know so many composer teams. So it'd be nice to hear a little bit more about that. So I think we can actually just start on with the talk straight away. I don't want to use the time to chit chat. So I give the word to Flemming and then take it from there.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Thank you everyone for showing up. I'm very happy to be here, and because I'm very curious myself to hear how do you actually collaborate between two composers? How does that work? Because I have a hard time figuring out myself. I just watched I Am Greta a few days ago, and I really loved the film, and I had a really hard time watching it because I was finding myself crying all the time. Not because it's a sad story or because she was sad or when she cried, but because it was just so huge. This film, it's just such a huge subject, and it was so fantastic to feel how this girl has made this movement, has been able to create that just simply by doing what she does, very just insisting on being on strike, and the music played this role in a really great way, where it sort of just takes us on the journey towards something bigger and bigger all the time. It was not overly emotional in the sense of it did not try to make us cry. It was not when Greta was sad that we didn't have any music, actually, I think, but it was all the time about being bigger and bigger, but without the music being huge. It still had this, you could still feel this person in the music, and I really loved the score, and I really loved how you made that work. The score is very based on strings, mainly solo cello, I guess, with lots of dubbings. I'm guessing here, but you will tell about it. My first thing was I was just really thinking how can you write that kind of music together? How does that work? This is not your first collaboration. You have collaborated also on a TV series, and then you got to score Greta together. First of all, let's hear maybe why did you make this decision of doing this together? How did that come up?
Could I or do no, but you can start that. Actually, it started off by me getting offered the job because they already had a composer on from the beginning. That didn't work out, so they contacted me. I was doing a lot of other movies also, and Rebekka and I did this project that we worked on together. My schedule started getting so pushed, so it was impossible for me to finish the Greta score alone. So because they were so late in the editing, so the schedule got pushed so much. So when it was supposed to start working, the time was so short. So doing it alone and having the projects that I had, it was really hard to do it alone. So it was quite, I mean, it was pretty clear when I stood in front of that it was I'm going to talk to Rebekka, because Rebekka and I've already talked about since I got the project that she was very, very, very interested in doing something on it together, and when this all turned out this way, it was kind of clear that we should do it together. And
I think we both also realized that the film needed something like that, the two voices together, because the temp music that they had was a lot of melody and a lot of strings, and that's a lot what I have been doing before. So I think it was like an intuitive thing too. Yeah. And then when I came in was the 3rd of June, and the music was supposed to be ready by the 8th of August. So it was like, and we basically worked the whole summer on it together, and it was it was really the right decision to be two people on this film, because it was quite challenging and a lot of music in very short time.
And the production, I mean, and this is, I think it's very good to be honest about this thing. I think the production also was very complicated. Also, we were dealing with trying to do this during COVID and getting musicians in. So, I mean, Sweden was still very open, but logistics were so much slower of getting stuff happening and getting people to the studio, because there was this worry all the time also. So I think it was really good in that sense also to be two to tackle the whole production also. And
they were really late with post-production, but it was also like you say, Flemming, that how Greta and the story touches you. It was the same for us. That was like a huge to also be humble in the collaboration around this story and put her and the movement first. And that was also a flip side to the challenge, because she's a young person, she's alive, she's very present in everyone's mind, she's extremely in the media, and she's controversial. The movement is controversial. So there's a lot of aspects to deal with here, it's like a territory that you have to thread carefully, to not be too manipulative with the music, to not, like you say, to not be too leading. When does it become like propaganda, and when is it an extension of the picture? So it was a lot of things to throw ball around and understand, and therefore it was really good that we were two people with very different experience, I think, too.
But so you didn't start writing before that date? I mean, John, did you start?
A little bit. I started a little bit, but the thing is, the movie changed so much. I mean, I think they edited it for 10 months or something like that. I mean, it's so much. It was like, first off, it was kind of a coming of age film, you know, almost trying to twist it that way also. So it was really, every new edit you got, it was like, whoa, this was a new take on it. I mean, it was really like that, and I think it's so they were actually all over the place. So it was kind of hard. So I actually, just to save the spirit, so I just waited, because after I got the third edit and understood that they don't really know where they're going with this. So
I think they were facing the same issue that we just mentioned, that there's so many things to take into consideration around this main character and the story, and then there's a lot of big players involved that has bought the film. So there was a lot of opinions, and a very young director with a huge task in his hands and a lot of nervosity. So that was, to be very honest, that was a big aspect of it. We all know, like, if you work with really experienced directors, you tend to get more space to do what you want. If you work with inexperienced directors, it's more like micromanaging, and at least that's my experience.
So tell me about the first day when you saw the film, you got the film, you knew in 1 month we need to deliver a lot of music. You sat down together in that same room as you are now.
Yes, exactly. This is where the magic happens.
Then you saw the film, and then what? Who made the first note? Who made the first decision? Who had an idea? How did that first day
we
go?
decided to work with
voice?
We decided to work with my voice synth, which is a voice instrument that I've made out of 25 singers that I've recorded and programmed into like an instrument. And then we ran that through John's chain of synthesizers. What you see back there, the modules.
And a couple of amps and reamping it and tape echoes
and then something happened kind of fast there. I think we both felt like, okay, this has both the voices, which is the children, and the movement. It has the driving element of a lot happening 1 year with the synthesizers and the insisting arpeggios, and it had the amps, which was lo-fi and felt like it matched the lo-fi-ness of the imagery. And then we tried that on a place where they had an extreme love for the temp music. And they really bought it. They were like, this is it. So I think that was the first step.
Yeah, and also that we discovered quite quickly that it was that we needed strings.
Yeah.
That was also that was really one of the first things. We needed synths and we needed strings and
we wanted more voices than they actually wanted. So that was a little bit kill your darling. We wanted to have way more voices than it in the end.
But the funny thing is that and I all along have always heard piano in the score and even before Rebekka came in and
I'm a pianist, so I don't want to play piano.
And I was like, we have to have piano on this. And Rebekka was like, no, we can't have piano on this. We can't have piano on this. And I don't want to do it. I don't want to walk into it. I was like, I think we really going to need some piano on this. And then,
No, we had a few incidents with that where I realized that he was totally right.
Yeah, and I kind of forced Rebekka actually to sit in front of the piano and play some piano. And I think it was like the second recording we did or something. I think they both agreed that
no, you were right.
Yeah.
It's sometimes really hard with your most familiar instrument to realize that that's an easy go-to, you know, because it's where you're so safe there, so you feel a little blind in it. Yeah.
Did Flemming disappear?
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I my camera just I tried to fix another one here.
There you are. Oh,
yeah, I'm upside down.
We lost the host.
We lost the host. I'm here.
Yeah, you ran off.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Sorry about that. But
the string players is actually not one. It's a quintet, I would say. So it's but the core of it is Linnea Olsson, which is a cellist that I had worked with before many times, and that I said to John, let's try her, and you also fell head over heels.
Yeah, no, but that's also the first time we took her in. That was for the Viral Children queue,
which is where all these children start joining in
and on social media, and it's all this montage of social media kids that are connecting and fighting for the same cause, and it's a really moving montage of pictures, because I think that's when you start seeing like the greatness of this whole movement and how it's spreading. And we were sitting here and Linnea started playing, and Rebekka and I, middle of the take, we just looked at each other and we were actually sitting crying, both of us. I mean, it sounds pathetic, but it became, I mean, it was, I think I'm going to blame it also that I was really, really tired, but because I had worked so much. But no, it was how that connected with the picture and her tone and with Greta. It was actually
and Linnea's the most unpretentious, down-to-earth person. Yeah. So she looked at us, we turned around and she's like, what's going on? What's wrong? Is everything okay? We're like, yes, it's okay.
No.
And that was the piece with the voices that we ran through this whole chain, through the amplifiers, and then we took it home. I think I wrote the cello arpeggio, took it to John, and we said, let's try Linnea, and we took her in, and then that happened. And there we found the beginning of the score.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it actually started with a decision about the sound.
I think it
before you had any
jamming.
Yeah, we're jamming. Actually, that she started her voice synth, and we started putting it through that and starting delays and finding like the patterns. And we just started recording, and it's like, wow, this is actually pretty good. And we just, everything in the studio is directly connected, so I can record everything whenever I want. I don't have to really pull so many cables and connect stuff. So it's very instant. So it was actually, we just turned everything on and just, okay, let's record this. And I've the piano mic'd up in the other room next door, and so no, everything was just really a jam.
It's a jam.
Okay. We write most of our music together initially, and then there's always a lot of, writing after overdubs, orchestration. But I think with both the two jobs we've done, it's that instant, not really talked about before. Let's go in and see what happens in the room. And I just think it's a really safe space between us.
Yeah.
and the studio, everything's on, like John says, so it's very allowing to move in between, and yeah, and for me it's also super fun to work with the voice synth, and I had contact mics on my own voice, I think, so I was singing through the whole chain too. Yeah, and that's where most things happen, I think, for you and I, in the beginning, like that. It's very lust filled and very easy, and it's before all the limitations come, you know.
Yeah,
And
because you were jamming in the beginning, you start developing. At what point did you get the director over, or did you send him our stuff, or was he actually in the room also?
No, it wasn't. No, that wasn't. No.
We sent a few cues, that Viral Children and one more, and we got feedback right away that they really loved it and was like, wow, you replaced Philip Glass. Like, yeah. So then after that we had a quite challenging situation where he wanted to hear a lot all the time, and we had to say that no, you can't hear anything before this is the time schedule.
The director was so micromanagement. He went into so small details without and starting to lose the overall picture. And we knew that in this amount of time we have to deliver a score. And with him, and also I'm sad to say, and this is just the truth, it was really absent producers in a way, because there were nobody really keeping us to write the music or keeping us safe. And that was kind of hard because it was so short of time and it was a lot of music. I mean,
so there was the editor, Hanna Leonqvist and Charlotte Landelius. They did a massive job on this film.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of skills around music, and that was a real blessing. And then I think for Nathan Grossman, I think it was a real trust building process where we had to really make him trust us, and we had to say, okay, you need to leave a space now to meet the film, so it doesn't become that we try to replace the temp music only, and it becomes like a mishmash of trying to fill a void. And that is, I mean, every film composer has been in that situation, I guess. But he accepted that, which I thought was an enormous leap of faith from him in that situation. And I know he's super happy with how it turned out. So that's amazing.
So you didn't have to make markups of everything. You didn't have to sort of.
But in a way we had to. But it was, but the changes wasn't really. We told them that it can't be complete rewrites. You know, now we're going for this. So we sent them also sketches kind of early, also to just know that this is, you know.
This is it.
Is this flying or not? You know, it's.
And we set this like, okay, 2 weeks, then they get that batch. 2 weeks, then they get that batch. So it was like a step-by-step thinking.
We had to really. It was like a psychological schedule for how to deliver stuff to the director, so we could get the feedback, and he didn't have that much. I mean, it was a funny process in that.
But that's also when it's good to be two people.
Yeah.
Because you can be good cup,
bad cup.
Yeah, well, I was bad cup. You can wear different hats.
So you can really, I mean, it's a lot of, it's not just writing music, you know, when you're doing a film score.
There's a lot of psychology.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, and some projects are like that, and some projects are super smooth, and everything is just woo. But this wasn't. I mean, that's the thing. The whole, I think. The big thing that you take with you from this project is actually the collaboration. I think that was the whole that was the.
And also for my sake, I think it was a huge learning curve, because you were in the middle of Morbius and Marvel and all that, and you were like, okay, you have to take over all the communication. So I was the one who had all the communication with the team, mostly in the summer, and that was a lot of people to deal with and a lot of opinions, and it was a super. I came in here sometimes and you were like, yeah, you're getting tough skin now. You can handle about anything. I'm like,
you're gonna learn so much. You're gonna learn so much.
All this, yeah. So that was. I feel pretty tough after that, actually.
Yeah. No, that Rebekka really had to pull the yeah, on the whole communication with the production. She's yeah.
Yeah, that was fun.
No.
With such a tight schedule, did you also find yourself writing? I mean, separating the cues and sort of you do that. How did you? But everything based on the first ideas, or did you also have to write completely new stuff on your own? Do you remember?
Yeah. Rebekka did a couple of own stuff.
And I did most of the string arrangement sketches from at my place, and then we took them here and we recorded together, and then
rearranged
them. And then you did some of the cues you had sketched on. There was more of the arpeggiated synth cues towards the end. We developed that further, and then we had an amazing assistant, Kirsten Evans, who was sitting in London remotely, and who was fantastic and really important also.
Yeah, but helping with all the exports and imports and also that we were sitting on sometimes but we tried to meet at least 2 times a week. To sit together 2 times a week and then sit separate the rest of the time.
And we had the project in Dropbox, so we could open it from both our sides.
Yeah, so we worked on the same. We could see that we're working on the same project. So it was so easy with everything, you know. It's and that was another thing. We worked in the same door. I forced Rebekka to go over to Cubase.
After Pro Tools for 20 years, he was like, let's do Cubase. I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting.
She's going to thank me. In one movie, in the next movie, she's going to thank me.
I like Cubase now. I do. I have this thing where I force myself to learn at least a new program or one big thing per year. Right now, I'm educating myself in orchestration. And last year it was Cubase, and the year before it was Ableton and Sibelius. So it's good to keep, so you don't get senile when you get old, you know.
So you not only did you have to write like 60 minutes of music, I don't know how much music is in that.
80 minutes of music.
80 minutes of music.
Yeah.
Okay. In 1 month, but you also had to do it on a program you didn't know.
Yes, I wanted to strangle him a little
bit.
But
and the thing is that we have to thank Kirsten once again. Kirsten, we do this thing with TeamViewer, so she takes control over our computers. So she was just starting up everything that made sure that actually when you started in the mornings, your computer was up and running and the project was just...
Because he works on PCs and I work on Mac. So every time I had to open the library of instruments...
The contact doesn't work in the
she had to do some sort of conversion for me. So it was a lot of like, okay, Kirsten, now this thing is hung up again. Can you please take over? And I could see them. She was like, oh yes, of course, darling. And the mouse was moving around on my screen, and she was sitting in England fixing the bug. So without her, Kirsten, I don't know if you hear this, but that wouldn't have happened without you. So thank Lord for her. But it was, I mean, Cubase is amazing for film scoring. It's way better than Pro Tools, I would say now. For there's other things that Pro Tools is good for, but I think Cubase is very good for that purpose.
There's some questions from the chat. Ida Lee asked, Ida, why don't you ask yourself? You can ask it. Ask them, please unmute your mic.
Yes. Well, I was just curious, Rebekka, you were talking about like the handling all the communication. What did you think was like the most challenging?
I think it's always, it varies from person to person. I think in not only with Greta, but with every film, music has a lot of emotional emphasis. And I think with documentaries in particular, they're searching for the story while they edit. And quite often I feel like if there's something that's lacking in the editing or the story, they project that on the music. We don't feel enough, it's the music. So but I've been in that situation a few times, and I think with this, like we said, it was a very demanding process for everyone involved to make this film. But I think, I mean, it's a very emotional thing to make a film. It's so much on stake. Yeah, it costs a lot of money. You have to lead a whole team. It's tricky to be a director.
You're the captain of the boat.
Super challenging.
It is. The director is the captain of the boat.
It's a lot of psychology.
If there's no captain on the boat, the boat will run up on land or sink or whatever. But it's you need the captain.
So I think I mean, I feel like the most fruitful collaborations I've had with directors is where both it's regarded as a meeting, an artistic meeting, and not just, okay. I mean, of course, when you write film music, it's not about this is my ego and this is my art, because you're serving another story. That's the whole that's the whole nature of writing a film score. But still, it can be a meeting where you leave that space in between of curiosity and like humility for the other person's way of seeing that story, and it's such a wordless, intuitive thing too, especially in the beginning. So there's something there in that mutual respect that I think is really wonderful when it happens.
Did the director on this score? Did the director in the beginning, when you started working on it, and the film was done, the editing was done, you had to start your work? Did the director give you some very specific directions from the beginning, some ideas? Did he want you to stay close to the temp score, or?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't say it out, but there was definitely temp love. He was always referring back to the temp. It was always something, but.
And they had temp with very massive music.
Yeah, no, and it was also, he had no experience from before of working with composers whatsoever. I mean, and knowing the process of.
So he got nervous around.
Yeah,
that,
but he was a control freak, so he got so nervous because he didn't know the steps. So he thought, he always is like, yeah, but is this the finished product? I mean, it was really, I mean, I mean, for instance, he got, which I think is sorry.
Okay. No, but I think we had some really good meetings with when the editors came in together here, and we managed to like keep it safe. It was about creating a safe space a lot for us and for him and for them.
Yeah.
And he was really very close to the editors in this process. They were working really as a team.
Yeah.
So I think that's.
Yeah, and they were really helpful to us.
Yeah. I don't know.
I have a question about the work process. Is it okay? Can I ask it now?
Yes, of course.
It's not being I'm an ordinary composer, not a film composer. I'm curious. Do you work similar as an ordinary composer, sketching a score with I mean, how is the work process going on? Could you describe in shortly, if you go like sit and see the film, look at the film and get the mood, the feeling, and then are you composing like a normal score and then adding details, or tell me about your work process.
It varies, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just make a finished track directly of just pressing record and recording everything, but we never start on paper. That's
no, I think the paper comes later with film scoring. I think it's with both the project we've done together, and I think you work like that with your stuff too. It's more about getting the film in and starting to find the cues and making layers and find something that feels emotionally right, and then you take it to the orchestration part. For my sake, at least.
No. I've never actually.
I think you can import film in Sibelius, but I think it's hard to sit and write notes to it. It's not set up for that at all.
No, I think that in Sibelius there are some item you can work through all digitally, but
it's
but I
not
guess
really
it's-
a film scoring program. It's a
No,
notation
it's not.
program,
It's
so it's
not.
quite limited with the samples.
So you mean you use paper and pen as well? I mean, you don't.
I use Sibelius, but I do it after I've sketched, usually with MIDI, and then I either transfer the MIDI and then it looks totally crazy and I have to like sit and do all the articulations and expressions and everything, or I skip importing the MIDI and just use the MIDI as a sketch mock-up kind of thing and sit and write it in Sibelius afterwards. But the musicians that we worked on our projects are not only class, they read scores, but they're also really
Go by ear.
yeah, they're super flexible.
Mhm.
And I actually prefer, at least
Yeah,
when
but
we-
you get this directness, and I think it's
Yeah.
and especially when it's need to be done fast, and I don't know. I think it's yeah.
you're really used to working on these big scores.
Yeah,
with
and I never write
orchestration
on
and
paper.
stuff.
I never write on paper. That's my work, up to my orchestrator to do. He writes all that for me.
But did you on this project? Did your cellist also sort of improvise stuff, or did you?
Both, yeah.
Yeah.
I wrote
It-
some voices for her and some rhythmical patterns, and there was a lot of like ricochet arpeggios and stuff that we wrote out. But in the end, she's like classically trained, but she's worked with Peter Gabriel on tour and Anne Brun, and she's super flexible.
Yeah.
So we just let her loose kind of, and then I mean, it's the melodies that we wrote and the themes that we wrote, but if she wanted to add another technique to it, or if she heard an extra tone, or if she's like, how about we put the accent here instead of there, she's so intuitive, and she was amazing. Also, it's the first time she's done film scoring.
Yeah, and she just connected to the picture.
Yeah.
We had the picture rolling while we were recording her, and it was just absolute. And that's when we started crying.
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it is. It
Yeah.
was. It's yeah.
And there's something about Greta that really makes everyone want to do their best. You know,
Yeah.
I've noticed like people really, all the musicians came in with this like, this is important. This film, this is such an important topic for us, for our children, for our future, and that really you could sense that in the room. It's really beautiful to work with. So.
Could you tell about? I remember we had this talk about collaborations before, and you talked about a special scene in the movie where you thought you were finished, but something were missing. And could you tell about? You know what I'm talking about, right?
It's that place.
Yeah.
Maybe we can.
Yeah,
We can actually. I don't know if it's possible to see it. Do you have it? Can we try to share it? We know that the sound will not be so fantastic on Zoom, but we could try.
So
see.
while he finds it, I can tell a little bit about. It's a scene where on the record release of the score, it's called Trolls, because it's all these internet trolls that starts attacking her, and it's a lot of older white male politicians in the world also that attacks her. So bizarre, but so it's Putin and it's Bolsonaro and it's Trump and it's all these guys. And then we wrote this really droney, fantastic, I think, your synth world, and all these like tremolo, very like almost like airy, double bassy atmosphere thing that really fit, but we felt something's lacking because it goes into a sequence where she starts dancing like Pippi Longstocking to her own melody.
Yeah, it glues, but we need another layer. And
then Jon was like, why don't you go to the piano? And I said no. And then, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to try it anyway. Yeah. And then
she started playing and
I didn't see the imagery. No.
And I just pushed record and yeah, she nailed it on the first take.
You came into the room again with tears in your eyes and was like, do you want to see what just happened? And
yeah, it worked so well.
And we didn't change a thing.
Yeah.
So that's, and the interesting part.
I just want to say also, I don't cry all the time.
Oh.
You know, it's not that, but I'm pretty emotional, but it's I don't cry all the time, so it's only special occasions. But this on this movie it happened twice. So
No. But the thing is, the interesting thing about that situation is that if I was alone or if Jon was alone writing that cue, it would have taken way more time to get to that solution, because I think I would have tried piano after a while, but I would probably have overdone it, done too many takes and been like, and I don't know if you would have tried that solution. So there is a synergy that can happen with two people where you peel off each other's self-criticalness, if you can say if that's a word. So you get instantly into something faster, I think.
And what you just went in there and you just played it. So this was a complete improvisation, or was it based?
Yeah, that was improvised.
Did you have some kind of? You didn't have any. You didn't base it on
I had the drone.
harmonies, or yeah, you had the drone, of course. But I mean,
my ears, and I knew what was happening, and I knew that okay, on the end of this cue, she's going to start this really super autonomous, free dance, which is really beautiful. It's one of the most like musical moments in the film.
It's very poetic.
Yeah.
Did you find it, Jon?
Right.
Let's try to roll it and see if see how it goes.
I don't know how the sound's going to be, but
No, if you can hear anything.
En person som har diagnosen Asperger fokuserar och intresserar sig oftast på ett ämne. Greta intresserar sig av klimatet och har blivit riktigt lurad av alla lögner som samhället matar henne. Men medias Asperger gullegris är inkapabel till att ens nämna ett exempel på vad som behöver göras. Känns lite snett att hylla henne som en klimathjälte när hon inte ens under intervju kan nämna ett exempel och använder det är så mycket som behöver göras som bortförklaring. Löjligt. Mamma skriver manus, gråta lite, det ger effekt. Men vad fan, Greta. Hon löser detta med att vara PR-kåt. Ingen bryr sig om henne.
А что вы думаете про Грету Тунберг?
Я, быть вас разочарую, но я не разделяю выступление. Никто Грете не объяснил, что современный мир сложный, многообразный, быстро развивается. И люди в Африке, либо во многих азиатских странах хотят жить на таком же уровне достатка, как и в Швеции.
To be honest, a lot of people find it very annoying. They find it very hyperbolic and very hysterical and very over-emotional.
Greta, you know Greta?
A Greta já falou que os índios, né, morreram porque está defendendo a Amazônia. É impressionante a imprensa dar espaço para uma pirralha dessa aí. Pirralha.
She's not a messiah. She's just a depressed and extremely anxious girl, and a very unhappy one. Asperger's is very clearly an advantage in this case. It's actually a weakness. She's a kid. She talks nonsense. She tells the climate alarmists exactly what they want to hear. You're selfish, badly educated, virtue-signaling little turds. Wake up, grow up, and shut up until you're sure of the facts before protesting.
Hej.
Hej, Stockholm.
Vi ser ju att det här problemet kommer bara växa.
Sorry on the
So was it difficult with the sound?
Yes, I'm not sure if it was as bad for everyone as it was down here. But I couldn't even hear there was a piano, so
Sorry about that.
yeah. Okay, I see that Kim has shared the Spotify track.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
But
about the sound. It's tricky with Zoom
No.
with the sound.
Yeah, there's a Douglas writing that you can share audio directly by going to the share settings and selecting share audio. Maybe we could try that.
You can listen to it if for those particularly interested. It's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Spotify track because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I think it's better.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks for trying.
Thanks for nothing.
Maybe I could. I think it could be interesting to know a little bit more about how you actually met, how you started, why did you decide in the first place to work together? Not on this film because we know that, but when you decided to do the series together, how did that work out? How did that came across?
We were sitting on a panel for Export Music Sweden.
Carl Fried was there too.
Yeah, and actually on the way back from that panel, I got a call for doing a TV series for HBO, and I've Googled Rebekka before we were going to this panel, and I've heard about Rebekka too, but I didn't really know her music that well. But I Googled her before I went, and I think she made some really, really fantastic music, and you know, I think it was just when they called me. I mean, we were on the subway on the way back, and I just told Rebekka, I was like, "Are you open if we should do a collaboration on a TV series maybe?"
And I thought he was so amazingly like what trust to ask that when you barely met someone. I thought it was really amazing.
And also because I think also I could really hear Rebekka's music when I thought that directly when I heard the idea about this documentary. It's about this religious cult in Sweden, Knutby.
Yeah.
So it was this, and I heard her voice just in my head directly after her music that I listened to the night before. I mean, it was really so for me it was just this. Oh, this collaboration was meant to happen. I think, and
destiny.
Yeah, but totally. And I'm definitely not that kind of guy who believes in those things. But
the thing is that
you never cry.
No, but I never cry, and I never cry.
He's a real softie, and I love that.
No, yeah.
But it's also we're good at really different things, and I think that's also a huge strength. And I mean, to be able to collaborate, you really have to put your ego to the side, and I think that's something that we've somehow managed to do. And Jon's experience is something that I haven't, like, he comes from sound design background, which is so interesting for me to learn how he thinks about sound in film and the layers and also all the synths and the modules. Right now I'm borrowing like a big lovely setup that he's borrowed me and doing all these tutorials on module synthesizers. And it's just so, if you want to stay flexible and humble and vital as an artist, you have to let other people in, I think. And you have to be, I mean, we is better than one when it comes to art, in my eyes. I don't believe in the singular genius, and especially not in filmmaking. So it's a real gift to find someone that you can collaborate with. It is.
How did you work when you started working on the series? Was it the same sort of, you sat down together in the same room?
That was really a jam. I mean, Rebekka came here. We were in a week in the studio and made the whole.
We
were in a week. I mean, I think we set everything up.
Yeah,
and we started recording, and I think it was after 6 hours. We just I think we need to eat something
So it was a sort of jam session that started it.
Yeah.
And then it was months afterwards of orchestration and adding instruments and then musical editing and all, of course. But again, I think, and for me, it's always been like that with musical collaborations, that if music is such like it lives its own life. It's like its own little vulnerable thing. And if it's good vibe in the room, anything can happen, and it can become this amazing synergy, which becomes super productive and creative. And then it can die really fast too if there's someone that makes you nervous in a room. It's hard to make music. So I think that's what has happened. And let's just hope we can nourish it and keep it growing and take care of it.
Yeah, but it's as Rebekka said, I think you just have to leave the ego. For a good collaboration, you just have to just leave the ego at home and just be vulnerable and be completely transparent regarding what you think and so on.
And there was a lot of situations this summer where you had the big film on your shoulders, and it was tricky with this film, and it was a lot of things that could have become conflict.
Yeah, but it didn't, because I think we were very honest, and and just to feel that safety of being honest with each other in a collaboration I think is crucial.
Definitely.
Do you have any plans on new collaborations? Any projects that we are allowed to know of?
No, not that's public, but we definitely have.
Yeah.
But you are going to do something soon together. Yeah,
definitely. No, this is I think that's the thing also. I think we both kind of found out that this was something we could do this much more often and
it makes it more fun, and you can it takes, I mean, working project after project alone, Flemming, how solitary it is.
I know.
You sit alone so many hours and so many days, and it is. So then this idea of coming, also like in COVID, I drove in, I said bye to my kids all summer and drove into the city. I live in the countryside, and I was like, I have a colleague, I have a place to go to. Hey, how are you today? Just
me too, I have a colleague.
He doesn't speak much, does he?
No, he doesn't collaborate much either, but he's not, I mean, it's easy.
I
don't think
he doesn't talk back.
It's not the kind of mask they expect you to wear.
No. So I think we've been through a lot of stuff here. I'm not sure if anyone wants to ask any questions.
We probably talked so much that
we talk so much, maybe there's nothing to ask, but I feel that we have covered a lot of stuff, but there might be someone who wants to ask something. It could be really nerdy. It can be really personal. It can be.
Go ahead.
Okay, I will do it then. Didn't you fight just once during this film? Just a real like.
Yeah, there was one situation where Jon got really annoyed with me because we were meeting the editors and the shuffle.
I forgot it.
That's good.
Yeah, I forgot this one.
Shuffle.
Yeah, I forgot this one.
I was in the beginning of Cubase, and I had done some edits at home before we were going to the studio here to meet the director and the two editors. And I managed somehow, because in Pro Tools I can use the shuffle function, and I know how to do, but in Cubase it's a little different with shuffle.
All the recorded audio in the actual session was moved. Irregular. All the audio.
And
so only the media was in place.
And we had like 20 minutes before they came, and he was like, why is everything out of place?
Yeah.
And I got more stressed than you.
Yeah, but that was my own fault, because I couldn't get angry because I forced her to start using Cubase. So it was
But we fixed it before they came. But then I was pretty I freaked out, and you were like, don't freak out now. We don't have time for freak out. So that was the biggest conflict we had. I think that was that was it.
Yeah.
And I learned to not use shuffling Cubase.
That was not that much of a fight, huh?
you were
I'm a bit disappointed here.
No, it wasn't. No.
But musically, either you didn't. Weren't there any places in the film where you're like, no, I think we should really not, and you do have it, or it seems like everything is just like you're jamming, you're like building, and
we had different opinions about certain things, but usually what happens is that the other person realized that the other person might be right.
Yeah.
So I could come with an idea, and you're like, but this is too.
And I think it's also, to in collaborations also, I think it's also important to let the other person also go down the road if needed. If they see like, oh, I think we should go this way. Okay, if you want to go that way, let's see if that leads us to the right place. Basically.
Yeah, definitely. You have to have respect for the other person's process, because it might not be the same tempo as yours. It brings something that you didn't think about. Sounds like you had
Someone
and you found your thing. Yes.
Yeah, but it is. It's the dynamic duo.
Yeah, definitely.
I think Jerry Rothwell, did you wave? Did you want to say something before?
Yeah, I was just feeling like the director intruder in the house of composers. But I was like, I was interested in what that does to communication with a director when there's two of you, and whether there's like is that problematic, or do you agree like that one of you is the channel of communication to the directors and the editors, or how did that work, or was it fairly seamless and fine?
I was the one communicating mostly with Nathan on this project, and I think that was really good because you guys had a run up to when we actually started where it was quite complicated. So I think I came in with a little fresh blood and new eyes, and it became easier. It alleviated you, and I didn't have any preconceived notions about the situation. And I think honestly, I think that made it a lot easier. So I was the one communicating with him mostly. And I think that's it could become maybe messy.
But if we would have done it from the beginning together, I think we both would have
with the HBO series, we've been both had meetings together with the director, and it's smart to sort out some things before, maybe, so you don't disagree, so you're on a united front when you meet him or her.
Stefan, you want to ask a question?
No, it's just a short question about the orchestration. Did you have that set from the very beginning, or was it in the process that you thought, well, we should need this and this instrument here, or did you have it all fixed when you started working?
I mean, I think we started to talk about it and what kind of sounds we were after and needed, but I think also that we didn't really. We kind of closed the door on woodwinds. We
thought woodwinds
for a while, but we kind of closed the door from woodwinds and brass and
then when Linnea Olsson came in, the cellist, I think we thought string quartet kind of fast, because we didn't want a huge orchestra with the documentary film. We wanted to put the largeness and the drive in something else than a huge orchestra. So we were thinking that is this persistent, like Greta is really persistent and very focused. So we used the synthesizers to cover that part, and then the voices was the movement and her retrospective story, and the strings kind of became the earth, or like the Mother Earth, the glue and the umbrella over everything, in a way. So
interesting. Anyone else wanted to say something before I give the word to Kate? Should we say thank you?
I want to introduce a director-composer team, which is Nainita Desai, composer. I mean, when I was looking at your IMDb, I've looked at it for years, but it's just like the amount of documentaries you've done is amazing. So you're like kind of a heavyweight documentary composer, basically. But I also know you have a long history in music and sound engineering and mathematics and whatnot. You've been there and done that. So thanks for coming. And Jerry Rothwell, a very established documentary filmmaker, and I also saw that you don't only direct films, you've also edited, and you've been cinematographer and produced films as well. So
when I can't afford other people to do those roles.
Yeah. We're here to talk about your film, The Reason I Jump, which is an award-winning film already. That is a documentary about autistic people around the world that doesn't speak. And it's a film that opens all your senses. The visuals, the sounds, the music, just all the pictures. I felt like like everything opened up and I could take in a lot of impressions, thinking maybe I'm entering some of the world that some of these people experience or live in. So the film is based on a book by Naoki Higashida, who is a Japanese boy who was 13 years old when he wrote this book, right? Mm-hmm. And he's an autistic boy who doesn't speak. So, and it was translated by David Mitchell, a British writer who has an autistic son, or an autistic child at least.
Yeah.
And how did you, let's just start to talk about how did you come about making this particular movie? How did you come about the subject, the book, and take that on to make it into this movie?
Yeah, I mean the idea. I was sort of pointed at the book by two of the film's producers, Jeremy Deere and Stevie Lee, who also have an autistic son who's in the film, and they're also in the film. And I guess when I first read the book, yeah, it's kind of revelatory, I think, about Naoki describing his interior experience. He kind of imagines how neurotypical people might see the world, and he describes his own kind of sensory experience. And above all, the book sort of immerses you in this sensory world. You know, the things he is describing are about the way time works for him. The book's structured as 58 questions. It's like a strange one to adapt because there's no story, there's no characters. It's basically a Q&A about his experience. And I went to meet with him about the project. He was very excited about it, but said, I don't want to be filmed. You know, that his one rule was, I don't want to appear in the film. I don't want it to be about me. So that kind of left us with this text. And, you know, I was kind of interested in exploring, you know, could we make a film that meant an audience could sort of sit alongside people, non-speaking autistic people, maybe it could be global, and which use the text as a kind of tool to sort of shift our perception to try and kind of make us experience their world a little bit. And so very early on, we made the decision to make the film in 360-degree sound, and to really try and get all of the sound and images from the film from those people's environments, not to impose our own set of you know, visual effects or imagery on it. It was really about trying to experience people in their environments in a particular way. And very early on, started talking to Nainita about how a score might kind of fuse with those elements.
And that is the interesting part, because you do feel, you experience very much how they describe that they experience the world and the world around them. So I sense straight away there's a very close connection between the sound design and the music. Nick Ryan, I saw, did the sound design, and it kind of sometimes seems like it melts together. Mm-hmm. So how did you, Nainita, when did you come aboard the project? How early were you brought on, and how did Jerry sort of introduce the task of scoring this film?
Well, one of the first question that Jerry asked me, you know, about coming on board the film was, have I ever worked with found sound? And of course, with my background as a sound designer, that really helped the conversation.
Can you explain found sound for everyone?
So, the found sound in this instance was using the sound effects, the location, the diegetic sound that was on location that they used when sound editing and sound designing the film. So they'd give me little elements of sound effects in the scene, which I would then incorporate into the music. But we had to answer your question, I came on board very early. I think you'd already done some preliminary little bit of editing, but you were still filming at the time. So I was involved for about a year. I think we were editing the film over a period of 1 year. And so I think I was on board for about 15 months working on the film on and off. You know, every month I'd be delivering new ideas for Jerry to edit with. And we had a lot of initial discussions. You know, it was a very, very much a collaborative process, and a score and sound design, an audio immersive experience that was found through the course of the film. You know, we had lots of conversations with the editor and the director, with Jerry, and with Nick Ryan, the sound designer, and for a lot of it we were working independently, doing our thing, and then every now and again we would collide with our experiments, and that would help push us in off into different creative directions.
Yeah, so you actually spent a long time exploring and coming up with sort of sketches of music, and then you'd get feedback and get closer and closer to what the result would be.
Yeah.
And you're using like a really broad palette of instruments and sounds. I could hear, you know, violins, cellos, double bass, saxophone, clarinet, guitars, even vocals. It almost sounded like a choir sometimes, but I could see that it was you actually doing the vocals yourself, right?
Yeah.
So and of course there was additional programming where you also used some of the found sounds, I guess. So how did you come about to create that palette for the film of these instruments? I mean, you didn't go for a sort of regular just a string quartet or piano, or like, you know, you have quite an interesting combination of instruments. Was that a conscious decision or between you, or was it just like you explored and eventually got there?
Yeah, well, we initially, in terms of our process, you know, I have to say, first of all, that when I'm normally working on a project, there's a lot at stake, because you're coming in fairly late in the day, or, you know, the creative tone of the film has already been established. And because it was so early on, you know, sometimes as a composer, you can be filled with fear, because if you make suggestions or you start writing and go down a certain path, you feel that if it's not accepted by the director or the team, you're making mistakes, and that you're feeling inadequate, and that you're unable to create the creative, you know, direct the right creative direction straight away. And so there can be a lot of tension built up if you're not able to hit the nail on the head creatively very quickly. And the joy of working with someone like Jerry is that he never said, this is wrong, or this is, you know, it's like, it was a very much an exploratory path. There was never any right or wrong decision. It was always a joint collaborative effort where, you know, we try something and then we think, oh, that's not working, let's try something else, or expand on something and develop it. And so I think that kind of openness and trust is really important to making you work in a very free way, without that tension that you feel that you're making mistakes, or if you don't get the right piece of music written, you're going to be sacked, you know, which does happen with composers, you know. so that yeah, and that was a joyful process. So we initially started off by sharing playlists of music that inspired us. While, you know, I read the book. My way of diving into a project is to do lots of research. I love the research period, and writing on this project, writing away from the images. I didn't get to see very many images until much later on. And so I was relying on Jerry's descriptions and on all the notes and the research about sound and music and theses, PhD papers and scientific papers that were written about how autistic people perceive sound and music around them. So we shared these various playlists, and I remember I'm not going to tell you what those pieces are, but Jerry was very strong on a handful of artists early on, and so that inspired me. And then I would send Jerry ideas, and he would make notes and feedback on
that sounds really creative, and sort of like you could throw ideas and inspiration and reference to each other. So I'm curious, Jerry, because this film is about autistic people who are non-speaking, and it seems like they're from all over the world, and it seems like in the film that they've found certain ways of expressing themselves, through painting or other activities. And somehow I almost feel, or I experienced, that sometimes the music and the sounds almost became a bit of a language for them in the film. And was that something you intended? Was that it's almost like it's their language, even though there is a voiceover, of course, that we follow the story of, and we have
Yeah, there's the book is voiced at certain times in the film. I guess that we were looking for, at times the music's picking up off things that are within each individual's environment, and at times the music is, particularly with Nainita's voice, there was a moment when Nainita did some vocalizations of sort of very fragmented syllables from the Japanese source of the book. So even though kind of no audience will ever realize this, there's a moment where we kind of see the sort of Japanese boy whose journey kind of runs through the film, and is where we put a lot of the book. The voice there kind of is actually some text from the books that's kind of broken up and fragmented. So there's a way in which, I guess the music is the voice of people that don't necessarily aren't able to speak through language, or aren't necessarily to hold conversation.
Yeah, wow, that's really powerful. So there's some Japanese in there, Nainita. Well done.
Yes.
Because it almost felt like there was some sort of linguist moments of like interpreting someone who isn't able to speak, and of course you can see like Amrit, one of the characters, she's able to paint, to express herself, but that's not there's no audio in painting, so it's very interesting how that feels like it really joins together with the sound, picture, and music. So
is it worth us? Should we show like the first sort of Amrit?
Yeah, show us a little clip
to talk about how how that came about. I mean, with that clip, when we shot with Amrit, she lives outside Delhi. It was extremely hot, sort of 40-degree heat, and in the space where she lives, there were just a lot of fans, table fans, ceiling fans, and Amrit kind of, I don't know, my sense when we were sort of being alongside Amrit was the pleasure she got from the kind of breezes that those fans created. So we recorded the fans at the end of the day, sort of in kind of 360 sound, and then sent those to Nainita. And this is the scene that came out of that.
Okay.
And I'm going to hope that the sound plays okay. And if it doesn't, let's just stop it and we can discuss.
Yeah, that's fine as well.
Okay. Let's see if
No, I was just saying that's such a beautiful sequence. Just the sounds, the music, the pictures, the voiceover. It's very well combined, I think. Yeah, that's and the vocals that you are creating, Nainita. It gives a very special atmosphere.
Yes. I mean, one of the things we tried to do with the score was, instead of giving themes for characters that you might do in a fiction film, you know, we've got themes that represent different aspects of autism and how the characters experience the world around them. So one strong idea that we wanted to get across was the use of oscillation and repetition, and how when Amrit is experiencing, you know, the environment, there are things that, you know, she's swaying backwards and forwards, and they really respond to repetition, and it gives it's a very cathartic sense of relief for her by swaying backwards and forwards and having circular motions and repeating things for these characters. So that's something that we thought, how can we translate that into the music? And also with the sound palette that you asked before, I didn't want to use electronic sounds. I wanted to keep it acoustic and organic, because it's about the environment and the whole immersive sound. It you know, having everything derived from found sound, from using the human voice to represent the non-speaking characters, and acoustic sounds, it would sort of subliminally have this effect on the audience, that you could sort of experience what they're experiencing in a small way. So we took the sounds of the fans, and I created rhythms out of those elements, and then Nick Ryan created his rhythms as well. So you have this polyrhythmic sort of interweaving, flowing kind of piece that just evolves and grows and grows and grows until you reach this cathartic release at the end. And the words that I'm singing are beautiful circle, you know, in Japanese, sort of little broken fragmented vocals. So it's all sort of flowing, and it's all very organic until you reach that climax at the end. And it was also, for me personally, it was a kind of an homage to Walter Murch's work in Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now, when you see the sound of the ceiling fan going round and round, and it melds into the sound of the helicopters in Vietnam. So it was I wouldn't say it was inspired by that, but it was for me, but it was just a little bit of an homage to that.
Sure, we were thinking about that when we were filming it as well, yeah.
And from what Nainita's telling about her process here, is this very much how you envisioned and wanted it to be, or like, did you have any temp music for that?
Well, it was I mean, the whole film was quite an improvisatory process. It was really nice in the sense you'd kind of shoot something and then that would tell you what to shoot next, rather than going very pre-planned. You know, it's very much about sort of discovery rather than kind of, you know, executing something that you've already thought of. But what was nice about Nainita working so early on the film is that we weren't so much using temp. I mean, there was some temp that, you know, and it's, you know, working with temp in an edit is, as every composer knows, kind of a total nightmare for the composer. I think partly because when you're cutting, you know, the music, especially if you're cutting with music, it very much determines the rhythm of the cut and where kind of things are marked and highlighted, and so it's extremely hard to get away from temp, and you know, then you end up with that route where the composer's left trying to kind of imitate the temp. But with this, on the whole, you know, there was a small amount of temp, but mostly we were temping with either, you know, those initial kind of idea tracks that Nainita created, or with perhaps some other pieces of work that Nainita had done, or you know, sometimes, I mean, there's a scene we could show where I think at some point, Nainita, you'd just given a set of cello rhythms, and that having those really determined the shape of that scene as we were editing it. So instead of like cutting a scene and then handing it over to Nainita, the music coming from Nainita influenced the way the scene was cut.
Yeah, it's very beautiful, and it floats and works so well. It's rarely I see a film or hear a film where all the elements are so entwined in a sort of perfect way. I want to ask you about in the beginning of the film, there is some rain on the paper, and there's again, it's like it goes from sort of sound design to music, and it's very much like I feel like I get a glimpse into how some autistic people experience things or hear things. How did you develop that sound and that music to sort of
I mean, that sequence comes from Naoki writes in the book how in order to understand the sound of rain, he needs to flip through all of his memories of rain, and then only then can he kind of understand that it's raining. And so before this sequence, there's a kind of a sound design sequence of rain, hammering in the rain, and then the sequence goes to David Mitchell and kind of Nainita's work, kind of takes it on from there. Just one little thing I think on that is that I think it's really important not to generalize about autistic experience. You know, I think Naoki describes his own experience, and the different people in the film have their experiences. But I think I think one of the things that I kind of learned through the film is that there's no kind of such thing really as, you know, the autistic experience. It's very individual. Exactly. And hopefully the film bears that out.
Yeah, I think your film is very good at saying, you know, that some autistic people experience it like this, and not everyone, because I mean, autism is of course very different from person to person. So it's just a very beautiful way of expressing how some people, maybe in this movie, experienced some things.
Have we watched the sequence with the rain?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's watch another one. It's so inspiring.
Right. Well, hopefully this will work.
But this book helps me understand a bit. Naoki Higashida wrote The Reason I Jump when he was 13 years old. And like my son, he was autistic and didn't speak. It's like cartography. He makes a map of his mind. There's an example where Naoki talks about the steps that he has to go through to understand that it is raining.
Percussion is actually created using raindrops. And then what you think are hi-hats is actually the rhythm of my voice, sort of breathing in and out very quickly. So and layering it. So everything is there's nothing electronic. It's all created using drones and you know, sort of recording sounds and pitching them down to create pads and atmospheres and percussion, so that when you hear Nick's raindrops falling on the pages, they're the same sounds, and then sort of you've got the rhythm coming in, and then you have the real raindrops coming in, so that they blend and blur as one entity.
Yeah, it sounds great, and then with the visual as well, it sounds really, really good. How is it like, because they say in the film that certain sounds and sights are painful and certain sights and sounds are pleasant. How did you separate those? Like, because I mean, obviously the kids in the film, I mean, you have also Joss and Ben and Emma, because they're non-speaking, it's harder for them to express what is what. How did you kind of figure that out? Like what is the pleasant or unpleasant sights and sounds, and sort of express it? How did you differentiate that?
Well, we had different sounds for different characters, didn't we? We had kind of tried to separate them. Each character had like Ben and Emma, we had the double bass and the acoustic guitar kind of represented them, because they have a playfulness and such a strong relationship, and there's a yin and yang between the two of them, and they've known each other all their lives, and so that kind of, there's a scene in the film with the ice hockey scene, and so it's quite a fun element. There's a playfulness and there's a fun aspect to the music that surrounds them, and with Justina, who's based in Africa, she wears these little bracelets called these magic beads, and there's a sound associated with that. When we used this very earthy instrument called a halo, which is a hand pan instrument that sounds like a steel pan, and it sort of resonated with her, and the cello and the violin feature quite a lot as well. And with the cello, that was quite interesting because I had improvisational sessions through the whole year. I didn't write it like a conventional score where I brought in musicians, wrote all the music using samples, and then brought in musicians at the end to replace the samples. I was working with musicians and doing sort of a lot of improvisatory recording sessions, recording lots of experiments, and you know, there was such improvisation that in the session sometimes I didn't know what I was going to record with them. You know, I would write a lot of ideas and a preliminary sort of a foundation of ideas, and then I'd say to, for example, with the cellist, I used Elizabeth Wiklander, who's this Swedish cellist who plays in the London Philharmonic Orchestra, and actually it was Jerry who introduced me to her work and her playing. And we contacted her, and she said she'd love to be a part of the project because she's autistic herself. And so having someone who's autistic actually performing on the score gave me a very fresh, different personal insight into how she perceived the world as and her take on the music as well. So she would sit in the session, and I would say, right, you cannot, there's a really important scene halfway through the film in the forest, set in this forest with talking about setting with the audio recordings during the Second World War about the experiments that took place on autistic people and disabled people during that time. Jerry will probably be able to explain it better than me. And I said, right, you can only play 5 notes. And I set these parameters and boundaries. I said, when I point my finger upwards, you will go up a tone. When I point my finger down, you will go down a tone. And if I point it down again, you will go down another tone. And so we'd record a layer of cello, and then we do another layer. And I would point my finger upwards and downwards and just free improvise, you know, saying, right, I think it's almost like Bryony knows generative music, you know, and we'd end up with 7 or 8 layers of cello, which was incredibly rich and multi-layered. And then I would spend time afterwards editing it and chopping it up, and out of that would grow pieces of music from those sessions that I would then just give to Jerry. And then he would use them, even though I have ideas in my mind where the music may be used for certain scenes, he would then choose where to place it and come back with unexpected ideas. But talking about, there's another scene which is about, I think, the pivotal scene, a pivotal moment in the book, which really inspired the music and the sound design was Naoki talks about being able to hear the hum of an electrical generator. And to him, it sounds like a choir of angels. It sounds like music to him. And so there's this beautiful moment in the film. Jerry, I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah. Is that with Joss then?
Yes.
Yeah, Joss sort of, I think Joss enjoys sort of hearing the electrical sort of substations. I think because of the way in which 3-phase electricity kind of phases, and he, you know, I think it's something that he finds very calming. He can hear them a long way away. So we kind of cut together this sort of sequence where that just gradually escalates, and his parents had filmed lots on their mobile phone of Joss listening to these green boxes, and so we kind of, there's a sort of musical sequence that takes you into.
Yeah, let's see it. It's very beautiful sequence.
And sort of, so we came from, so Nick created these, took all these different tones of these generators, recorded using these specially created microphones that were built to pick up these subsonic frequencies. And then out of that, I recorded my voice and layered it about 40, 50 times so that it just grew and grew and grew until it reached this deafening sound that was almost like Penderecki. It was very unpleasant actually to listen to, but to Joss it was just beautiful. And talking about from the sublime and angelic to unpleasant, unpleasant sounds, and that took a lot of work in terms of shaping and forming that piece. And we had a lot of fun in the mix as well. That was great fun to mix in 360 immersive Dolby Atmos.
Great. Do you have a clip of that?
I don't have that clip prepped, but I've got the another clip which uses the cello and is about which we could use to talk about.
Yeah, let's see it. If you prepared it, then let's see it.
Yeah.
Hi, Joss. Lady is going to tap the fans on. It's like a fan. The fan goes round and round. You're making a fan. Make it spin fast. Make it spin fast. Going round.
It is going round.
Not so be tight.
Hi, Joss.
Joss? It's raining.
Good lad. Well done.
Good lad.
Joss, we're going to take the sausage and chips back to Brad.
What's clever about it is that in the mix, we played around with perspective a lot, so that when he's cupping his ears, your perspective of the frequencies that you hear changes. So if you're and so we were trying to put the audience right into the mind of Joss and how he hears sound. So as he's cupping his ears, the music perspective alters with the listening experience. And when he takes his hand away from his ears, it's much more high fidelity and clear and crystal clear.
Very clever.
Yeah, we had lots of sort of like in the there's the sort of danger of getting tricksy, like in the sounds, and sort of says like, oh, can we do that? But yeah, and a few ideas we kind of just rejected as being too tricksy. But I think unfortunately the film's not been seen very much in the cinema for one that's designed for Atmos. But I think it's interesting, like when you're in a cinema with it and the whole of one side of the cinema goes quiet or muffled because he's got his hand, that it kind of works well.
That's really great. Yeah, no, I think it's a really work of art. It's a documentary, but it's really like a work of art in every field. So I think we need to actually open up for some questions from everyone. I wish we could watch the whole film together and talk about it piece by piece. But let's see if there's any questions. I can't see any questions.
There's an interesting point about emotion that you've just made in the chat, because one of the things we really had to avoid, I think, was laying on emotion through the music, that it's a subject matter and things that you're seeing, that people bring an awful lot of their kind of our emotional kind of preconceptions to, and that it was really important to try not to let the music over. Often we were stripping things back, weren't we, Nainita, and sort of stripping.
Yeah. So I put the full mixes are on the soundtrack.
Yeah, exactly. That's very, well,
Yeah.
it is very
Yeah.
emotional. And I think, you know, some of the things that they say, like Ben says, you know, the meaning of our friendship can not be defined by words.
Yeah.
And I think that's so beautiful, because there, obviously in this film, there's so much else than words that is so amazing. That's really beautiful. So yeah, a lot of emotion. So another question from Katarina Sorsa. How many people were in the team of like sound design and music?
So on the sound design side, very small team. Sound recordist Sarah Lee. You know, when we were shooting, it was just camera assistant, and me. We had to be quite small. So Sarah Lima, who was the sound recordist, did all of the 360 sound recordings sort of as we were shooting. We were running 3 recorders, kind of crazy sort of operation. And then sound design team was Nick Ryan was a sound designer, Nick as an assistant, and then we did the sound mix at Aquarium, Ben Bear.
So kind of a small team.
Yeah, pretty small. Documentary size, not, you know, not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's more Foley artists as well. I think that Nick got on board for some of the heightened sounds. And on the music side, I had a mixer, a score mixer, but it was basically me, really, and the musicians that I hired. That I'm very careful about. I choose musicians very carefully because I want to work to their strengths. And so I had Daniel Pioro, was featured violinist, who's played with Johnny Greenwood, and he's amazing to work with. And yeah.
Jerry, do you go stop by the studio and listen, or do you?
Yeah, I came every now and then. Not I wasn't kind of I didn't haunt many to hopefully.
So yeah, and it was periodically I'd send, I'd write a lot of experiments, and then I would send them to Jerry, and I'd send stems as well, I think, sometimes. And later on, as things got more intense, I was then writing to picture as well. It wasn't just writing away from the images. Then I would start getting rough cuts, and I'd start really crafting to picture.
Yeah. There's a couple of more questions. Sophia Ersson is asking, do you somehow, as musicians, understand the sensitivity in people having autism? And she's a composer, and her son has autism. He's only 3, but she recognizes so much in him, in sound. How is that for you personally? I mean, you said you had a cellist who was autistic, and do you yourself understand the sensitivity in people having autism?
Yes, it's funny, over the course of working on this film, how when I mentioned to people what I was working on, and that everyone, it's been such almost a taboo subject, and people have been coming out of the woodwork in my life around me, because they felt that they could, oh, that's an amazing book, it's just transformed my perception of autism and neurodiversity. So, I mean, there's one scene when Elizabeth was playing the cello, and it's about the Second World War and the experiments that were taking place by the Nazis. And I had my back to her, and so I played her the scene, and I turned around, and she was crying, and I was quite taken aback, because she said, "It's okay." I said, "Is the music that bad? They're making you cry?" And she said, "No." She said, "The music is fine. It's lovely." But she says, "I feel everything very, very deeply," and it really opened my eyes and ears, and my perception of how she perceives the world. She said, "Everything that these characters in the film are experiencing, I feel myself incredibly deeply." And so it just made me personally open my eyes up to, in terms of sensitivity. And as musicians, we are incredibly sensitive souls, because we're writing music for film, and we're telling stories through music. So, I am already, I have to be heightened and in tune with what the characters are feeling and experiencing, or I try to put myself into their minds as much as I can.
As much as you can, yeah. There's also a few people who would love to know, Nainita, what they love the rhythmic stuff and that you made from the fan noises and so on. And if you could talk about how you approach this technically, like if you loaded the samples into a sampler or if you used any other techniques of creating those rhythmic parts.
I mean, I used a lot of granular synthesis on the vocals. In terms of the rhythms, just a lot of painstakingly editing them manually in Logic, really. And just trying to keep it as organic and raw as possible. I didn't want to have sounds, even though everything is very well recorded. You know, I'm using Neumann U87s and Neve preamps and, you know, really good signal chain and signal path. I didn't want to have a pure, clean, classical sound. I wanted to keep the slight roughness and also with the vocal processing. It was interesting that opening piece with the fans that that we played, I over processed the vocals quite a lot until they sounded a little bit too electronic. And I remember Jerry coming back to me and says, it sounds too electronic and too synthesized and processed. So I sort of toned it down so that it still sounds as though it's the human voice that's creating it, but still slightly otherworldly and unreal. So I wanted to keep things raw but still there was a fine line between over processing and under and keeping it pure and clean. So.
Another last question is, Jerry, did you always know that you wanted music in the film, or did you ever think of having just sounds, or like when did you decide, what made you decide to have music or not?
I think, I mean, I feel like I always use music too much in my films, and that I kind of sometimes rely on music as a prop when I shouldn't. And there's a way in which music can hold you away from a scene, you know what I mean? And the great moment when music stops and you kind of launch into the film in some way. But I think right from the beginning, this one was about like how could we create a sound bed for the entire film that had both musical elements and sound design elements. So I think it probably uses less music than other films that I've done. But
it uses it very well.
but I definitely learned a lot from
that's great. Do you know, is this going to be shown at the Norwegian Human Documentary Festival? I'm going to check. I'm going to see where people can watch this film, because I'd like to see it in the cinema at some point, and I'm sure everyone in this seminar want to see this film now, so we have to figure out how we can see it.
And it's just beginning to get its cinema release, right? You know, as cinemas will open. I think in the UK it's from
and it's definitely a feast for the senses, so you should all go and watch it. Jerry, you posted a great link in the chat where it's about immersive sound.
Yeah, so that's sort of describing more the sound design side of it, from shooting through to the work we did. But yeah. Well,
I think we actually have to wrap up. It's a luxury to actually want to keep on. So thank you so much, Nainita Desai and Jerry Rothwell, for your time and for sharing your insight, sort of information about the collaboration you have and the film. It's really a special film. I want to see it again, and it's really inspiring for a composer, and also just as a human being, it's really interesting, and I actually learned a lot from it too, and I felt like my ears just sort of opened up. So thank you so much for contributing and also showing us pieces from the film.